Ta-da! Absolutely. So everybody in my YouTube space, welcome. And this is a YouTube live stream. And of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is another episode of the Envision Speaker Series. So with that being as it is, ladies, are you ready? Just give
We're
me a
Yes.
thumbs
ready.
up. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Welcome, everybody. Of course, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is another episode of the Envision Speaker Series. This is going to be a really powerful conversation, and hopefully that you'll have fun listening and watching to this conversation because these ladies are going to give us some real keen insight into how to eat, which is seems to be so logical, but we're throwing it all out of whack. And so let me introduce everybody by first name, and then I'm going to give them an opportunity to tell us who they are, why they're here, and what they expect from the conversation. I have Shirley, Ingrid, and Stella on the call with me. Good morning. Good Saturday morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Well, it's good to have you here. Let's start in how I see everybody. So, counterclockwise, Shirley, go ahead and introduce yourself. Full name, please. What brings you to this conversation, and what do you expect as a result of the conversation?
Yeah, great to be with you again, Keith. My name is Shirley Billigmeyer. I'm the creator and the founder of the energetics process, and also the author of the book Inner Eating. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm a grandmother. And even though I came from a really strong, supportive upbringing, I had this undertone of this angst about size and weight. What did I need to eat to be healthy and trim? And this angst stayed with me. It stayed with me all the way through college. And when I ended up teaching, I noticed it in my students. There was so much energy that they were thinking about eating, what they weren't eating, and the frustration they had in their body, that underlying angst that was absolutely consuming them. And I kept wondering, this doesn't make sense. Eating was meant to give us energy. It was never meant to drain our energy. And I thought, what is this underlying angst? After the birth of our first daughter, I had an aha moment of why something as simple as eating had become so complex. So, as we go through this podcast, we're going to unravel that mystery of why something as simple as eating has become so complex, and even give you some tools as to how you can start unraveling the mystery.
Shirley, I love it. Ingrid, good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Dr. McNally. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So, what brings you to the call, and what do you want to get out of the conversation?
Yeah, I am a wife and mom of two little girls, and that angst that Shirley mentioned around food and size followed me most of my life. Um, Very typical, going through trying different diets, dealing with baby weight and recovery from babies, um, and found Shirley by listening to the local radio station. And she told some pretty compelling stories, as did the host, as to how you can eat simpler and not live with that angst. And I recently went through the energetics process and have discovered how to eat like my kids and live in a body that I love and enjoy for all of the pleasure senses beyond taste. And what I would like to get out of this conversation is to let everyone know that you too can get rid of that angst and all that energy around, do my clothes fit? What diet should I try next? Why did 10 pounds creep back on? I thought blueberries were supposed to be healthy. Why am I still 10 pounds overweight? So I really hope that the listeners understand there doesn't have to be that excess baggage around food. It truly is meant to be simple. The rest of life is complex. Eating is simple.
Well, I hope that we're going to figure that out, and hopefully, you're going to tell me are blueberries healthy, and so we need to.
They they
I thought
are,
they
they
were.
are. But if you're not hungry for them, they go to waste.
Okay, well, we're going to dive into that. Stella, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very
So,
much for inviting me to be on the call today.
absolutely. So, what brings you here, and what are you going to get out of the conversation?
Well, my name is Stella Litton, and I'm an energetics coach, and I'm also a mother of two sons who are now in their mid-20s. Um, Perhaps unusually, I didn't actually come to energetics from a place of having storage. I was actually very fortunate to be raised with total freedom of choice in food. Um, what I did desire at the time was meaning and purpose beyond marriage and beyond having children. And going through the energetics process, what I discovered was the importance and my need to have a very strong connection to my female core. And understanding that made me realize how important it was for mothers to have that, to be empowered so that they can actually pass this on to their children, so that their children don't develop any issues around eating and food. I think also what I would like, whilst we're on this call, is for other coaches and therapists to also understand the importance of this process for them, because they need to ensure that they have their boundaries really in place so that they don't become drained when they're actually working with and helping others along this process as well. And I think I would also like the audience to understand that it is possible to eat the foods you enjoy, to be at your natural body weight, without having to worry about storage, and just really enjoying your food and enjoying your life. And I guess I have an overarching desire, and that is the empowerment of mothers so that they can empower their children.
I love it. And so the only thing that's missing in this conversation is the men. And so I'm going to represent the men, I think. But at the very least, the problems that women and mothers face doesn't necessarily stop there, because eating had become complex for me. And I had this conversation with Shirley at some time in the past that, and this is just kind of going to be the catalyst into the conversation. What I was trying to do is rebuild my body. You know, I'm half a century old plus some, and I'm short in stature, and always had, you know, thought less of myself because I wasn't this big bulk, you know, football player type looking dude, right? But I wanted to be strong and, you know, gain size. So ate all the things that I thought I should eat. Proteins, whey proteins, and all this kind of calories. And you know what happened? Shirley, remember what happened? I had a heart attack.
Oh,
I had a heart
yes, I
attack in
remember clearly.
2022. My kidneys were failing me. My apparently my heart was failing me. I was doing all the wrong things because I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do it the right way. But now that was my wake up call. And so everybody here may have had their own wake up call, their aha moment. But we need to figure out why has eating become so complex? So I'm going to start with Shirley. Why
Yes,
is eating
that
so complex?
yeah, why did it become? Why is something simple as eating? When we're born, we know how to eat. We know how to chew, eat, and swallow. My aha moment was watching my daughter. She knew exactly when to start eating. She didn't care. She let me know she didn't have a voice. She didn't have words. She cried. She let me know she wanted to start eating. There was something inside of her. Ah, hunger. And what was even more interesting, she had a very strong stop. She knew when she was done. She knew she wanted to really stop eating. She didn't care how big it was. She didn't care what degree I had. She didn't even care about her diaper size or what nutritional things she had eaten. She could have cared less. She simply wanted to stop eating. These boundaries, then I realized these are the eating boundaries. And I went, oh my word, we are born with these eating boundaries, the start and the stop of eating. However, we just stopped listening. And when we left that boundary of hunger. We ended up in our heads. There are no boundaries in our heads. We can sit there and analyze. We can sit there and think what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat, but we've lost the boundaries. We just stopped listening. And as you'll hear, it's so key, as Ingrid will now describe, what she learned just watching her infants. Because when she came to me, she had just had her second child. I think her child was, and Ingrid, you can correct me, I think she was close to a year old, and that frustration. But she learned something when she watched her child.
What
Yes,
happened,
it was.
Ingrid? What happened?
It was a very telling aha moment, as you mentioned that word, Dr. McNally. So the radio program I heard Shirley on, the host was talking about how she went to the break room and grabbed mini Oreos and ate them, even though she wasn't hungry for them. It was just this thing to do. And I resonated with that. So as a mom, you could very much say I'm a distracted eater, or was a distracted eater. Two little kids running at my ankles, or in this case, holding one, the other one running at my ankles. And eating just to get through the day because it was something to do, right? Oh, there's a bag of mini Oreos there. Okay, I'll have that. It's an instant pleasure hit. Taste feels good. Chewing feels good. It's an action I can take. And so hearing that story on the radio and then that sitting with me and then holding my daughter and seeing her start and stop that Shirley also described on that same radio program, like, how come I don't do that? How come I don't know when I'm hungry and when I'm full? I eat because culture tells me to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I eat at snack time because my kids are eating snack. And that food, all of that food is just going to waste in my body because I'm not hungry for it. And so that was like the moment that clicked for me, this aha, as I'm watching my daughter eat. She tells me when she's hungry, right? Shirley described, she cries. And then she tells me when she's full by going, push me away. Like, why can't I do that? Why do I have to sit here and finish my food?
Hmm.
Or why do I have to eat right now? Because those blueberries are sitting there and they're supposed to be healthy for me. I guess I should. That's the mindset that I was in. And it was complicating my life and giving me all of this extra angst because I'm carrying around extra storage and I don't like it and I can't get rid of it and I don't know how. And I've tried diet programs and they work and they're hard. And then you get tired of what that diet program requires. And then guess what? The weight creeps back on. So Shirley simplified my life through the energetics process, like immensely, because I don't have this extra baggage and weight that I'm carrying, literally, like it's not on my body anymore and it's not in my mental load. I don't have to think about food the way that I used to. And that frees me up to experience the rest of life, which has both good and bad things in it, but it simplifies that mental load so that I come at those other things, the good and the bad things, in a much more positive state. And I tell you, that is just tremendously helpful in my day to day.
Stella, I want you to add to this conversation, but once you do, I want to come back. So I'm going to put a seed into Cheryl, well, all of your into your thoughts. Is what Ingrid is taught. There's a psychological connection here, and we need to tap into what that is. But Stella, I know you didn't specifically say you had an aha moment, but how did you get involved in what we're now talking about, simplifying eating?
Well, as I say, I think certainly at the time it was because I had a desire beyond marriage and my children to find some meaning and purpose. And I tried different personal development techniques over the years. And then I heard a discussion with Shirley. And I just thought I understood about the gut. I'd been reading about the gut and the microbiome, and everything that she said just resonated with me. And I thought, this sounds exactly what I need. And I think with Ingrid talking, you've heard about the importance of being connected, really connected to yourself at a very deep level, at the gut level.
Mhm.
And that's what energetics offers you. And that's what I came to realize is what I needed.
Well, I like the idea that we're finding real purpose here, and not just in terms of a coach, but really a purpose of redefining who we are, how we live, and taking real control over that. And I think in our, this is at the time of this recording in 2024, and so hopefully this will last for eternity. We are at a crux in maybe in America, but across the globe, that societies and human beings are kind of at a chaotic moment, not really having purpose, understanding what their value is, and really having to manage that. So let's go back. What is the connection? What is the connection between the gut brain? And Shirley, you've talked about that. You've taught me what the gut brain is and the brain up here. There's got to be this connection that's been disconnected. And so, Shirley, help me understand, please.
Yes, that connection truly is hunger. That's in the gut brain. That's the beauty of how this process works, because I started with the whole concept of eating. Well, if you're not connected to the original boundaries of eating, of what sustains your life, you're truly not connected to yourself. That hunger is key. And also, what is key, what you talked about, is choice, total and complete choice, because that is our identity. Well, if you don't have total and complete choice of what sustains your life, you're truly not connected deeply to yourself. And people would say, but if I ate exactly what I wanted to eat, I would be 300 pounds. How can I possibly do total choice of eating? Well, with all of the quote unquote healthy choices that Ingrid had talked about with the blueberries, everything is good when it's healthy. And when you talk about choice, think about the research that's out there. They say, eat this, don't eat this, then eat this, eat this more. You need more of this. Well, by the time you're done with all those rules, you get it all set, and then the rules change. And the rules keep changing. So if you're trying to have some kind of an understanding in your head with all the research out there, it's going to be pretty confusing. It's not that the research is wrong, but why does it keep changing? Because when they did the research proved it. They had the numbers. But what are they studying? They're studying different groups of people. We are all unique individuals. So the group that they study, whatever that group leans towards, will be what that study is. Well, we are very unique individuals. So we need to connect to our gut brain. And would you believe that we are born with over 10,000 taste buds, not just on our tongue, but in our body? So I would give the example. If you read the research and someone says shrimp is healthy, but you eat it and you break out, is it really healthy for you? It may be healthy for somebody else, but in addition, if you are eating when you're not hungry, now you've added extra calories to your body. And understanding calories, now you're in your head. So you drop down into your gut brain. Hunger is within your gut brain. It's in the lining of the gut brain. And everybody out in this country, we're trying to bury hunger. I go, no, that's our boundary. We need to connect to hunger. We need to connect to total choice. And I want back to that choice, because what's happened is we have become, with healthy choices, I always say that's like an oxymoron, because when it's not healthy, now what happens is when you start eating those foods, and think about this, think about how these boundaries of these rules of eating have affected you. When you start eating something that's not on that quote diet that you are now tired of, as Ingrid described, you don't own the start of that, because you're not supposed to eat that. You shouldn't eat that. So how do you own the start in that should not list? I always say you can't want to should. So what's happened is, when you talk about total choice, if somebody is telling you what to eat, that's their choices. If there's research telling you what to eat, that's somebody else's rules. And so when we are following somebody else's rules, we really don't feel that a real solid connection to ourselves. We're always looking to go off of it. We're always looking to eat the opposite, to eat what you wanted to eat. So now all of a sudden, what you want to eat becomes the unhealthy because everything else is in the should list. So I open up total and complete choice. So you can want a salad. I always gave that description of the peanut butter cups with a story where the father had become the keeper of the peanut butter cups. The wife knew my process and she said, Shirley, you've got to help me. She said, there's like a war going on between my son and my husband. He is like the keeper of the peanut butter cups. And I said, okay. And our son was like 8 years old. I thought this won't take long. It hasn't been that long. So I met with the family, and of course, I said, we're going to have a little change here. And he was willing to listen to me. I was friends with them. He thought, okay, she might know a little bit what she's talking about. We'll see. I said, we're going to change the rules here. Let's have your son be the keeper of the peanut butter cups. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? He's going to eat peanut butter cups the rest of his life. And he said, okay, I'll try this for 4 days. He can't totally wreck up his health in 4 days. I said, okay, 4 days, that's fine. I'm in. So they sat down with their son and they said, okay, we've got to change here. We're going to let you be the keeper of the peanut butter cups. Well, his little eyes just
My
like,
eyes just went
my
off.
word. This is like heaven on earth. Oh my word. He grabs all these peanut butter cups, he holds them, and then now they're gonna have dinner, and all the peanut butter cups came on his plate. That's all he ate. Peanut butter cups. He's thinking this is fabulous. So then the next morning, but he made sure he had those peanut butter cups with him by his bedside, just in case the rules might change. He wanted to keep them with him. So the next morning for breakfast, guess what? Peanut butter cups. And the husband's going, yep, I know he's going to eat these the rest of his life. Then came lunch. Same thing. Then he was going out to play. You think he's going to leave those peanut butter cups in the house? Oh no, he's taking them with him out to play. And he sits there. And the husband's going, yeah, yes, here we go. Second day, breakfast, peanut butter cups. Then something started to change around lunchtime. He was out to, yeah, his peanut butter cups, and he was going out to play, and he forgot the bag. So the mom, very smart, said, you forgot your bag of peanut butter cups. He said, oh, that's okay, Mom. Just put them on my shelf. So she put them on the shelf. There was starting to become the break of that intense need to ground himself from the foods he couldn't have. So he went out to play. That dinner, came back with the peanut butter cups. And of course, the husband's going, yeah, that's what I thought. Next morning, he sits down. Mother puts the peanut butter cups on his little plate. He said, you know what, Mom, I think I want some cereal. There was the aha moment for the husband. He went, I see what I was doing, because he now had total and complete choice. So he could want all foods. And inside our gut, we have that information of what feels right to you. When you go to a doctor said, how do you feel? Well, if you're not truly in your body with total choice and hunger, how do you even describe logically or even feeling wise how you truly feel? So this process really grounds you in your gut where your eating boundaries exist.
Before anybody else jumps into this conversation, one of the thoughts I just had, and forgive me if I'm wrong or if this is out of scope, the three of you, one of you will tell me. Doesn't the body know? Because you talked about there being taste buds other than in the tongue, but doesn't the body know what it needs, not just desires or what tastes good? Ice cream tastes good, candy tastes good to certain people. Um, I love peanut butter. But doesn't the body know what it needs, and then somehow your brain says, okay, well, I need a salad. I need that carrot. I need that tomato, or I need that pasta, or I need that potato. Doesn't it know to need stuff? And maybe this is out of scope because this is part of how I overcomplicated my own eating. And then I started coming back to, well, I shouldn't probably eat these high salt, stuff, these processed foods, these processed foods. Um, but then I'll go and I have a need. Like the other day, all I had for dinner was salad. Like I needed that salad. I needed the tomatoes, the carrots, the lettuce, all that kind of cool stuff. Am I off here? Tell me if
No,
the body knows that, if it knows what it needs.
you described that perfectly because you combined the taste in your tongue. But if we're cut off from our gut brain, there's no messages that come through that say, okay, this is what I need to eat. That's why total choice is key, because I've got to remove all the ignorance from the outside. I got to remove all the chatter. You can read the research, but bottom line, you need to come back to your own body and get rid of all the judgment. The only judgment needs to be is how your body feels. That's how you got back to your body, because something just didn't feel right. Well, it was so cut off that the physical things were starting to happen to you because you weren't listening. And so that total choice, now you tapped into why we need total and complete choice connected to hunger, because that taps into all those other wonderful taste buds of the information that our body's going to give us. We need that information. And when we don't eat when we're not hungry, there's also all kinds of information that surfaces that before got buried with these rules of eating that cut us off from our gut brain. So you're absolutely right on, Keith, when you said eating is how you feel. It's not just what tastes good, it's also how you feel. But you can see with that peanut butter story, we first had to get rid of those rules. We first had to get rid of the judgment and somebody else controlling you out of fear that you might not be healthy, controlling you out of fear that you might be a certain size and weight. We had to get rid of the control to reclaim total and complete choice.
Ingrid, that was something that you addressed earlier, was you felt disconnected. And you may not have said it that way, but the way you were eating, had to eat 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, had to eat a snack because my kids were eating a snack. The rules, as Shirley keeps on saying, were outside of you. You were trying to comply with what expectations, I think, of when and where and how we should eat. How did this new paradigm of thinking about eating really change you? Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, that's a great question, Dr. McNally.
Cool.
So
I'm
I,
good at
like
questions.
many, I, like many, suffered from this strong magnetism to eat because of my life experiences, because of what culture tells you is right or normal, or what your family did. And that magnetism to eat, even when I wasn't hungry, is why I was carrying all that extra storage around. And so,
Can I stop you right
inner,
there? I don't want to interrupt, but I do, because you keep on talking about it as storage. Most people will call it something else.
they would call it fat.
Yeah. So is this a new way of talking about? Because
Oh,
we're really empowering our audience at this point. Words are powerful. And as a
oh
coach,
yeah.
Stella, you can jump into that, and I'm going to let you jump into that soon. Words and how we think about words are powerful. Why are you using that word?
Um, going through the energetics process, one of its most powerful tools, in my opinion, as a recent, person to go through the program, is that it's focused on positivity and joy and abundance. And so I learned to see my storage as energy. It wasn't this thing that I wasn't happy with on my body. It was energy for me to get through my day. And you start to learn how to take those negative associations with food and with eating and turn them into something positive. And they're called thought reminders. One of the most helpful thought reminders that I learned throughout this energetics process was, if eating didn't exist right now, what would I do? When I had that magnetism to eat because my girls went to bed and I have suddenly all these things on my plate to tackle while they're sleeping. Eating used to be what I would do first because it was easy and it was quick and it was an instant pleasure hit, even though I wasn't hungry for that piece of chocolate I reached for after the girls went to bed. And so through the energetics process, you start to unpack all of these distractions that you used to use food to satisfy. And you get back to the bare bones of the gut brain, which is eating is just for hunger. I have four other pleasure senses that I can use to get that instant pleasure hit. I have never taken the time to taste a sparkling water like I did going through the energetics process, where I used to reach for the fridge to say, okay, I've got X, Y, and Z to do. I need to eat right now just so I can get through it and it's going to make me feel good. I learned if eating didn't exist right now, what would I do? Okay, well, I can reach for that sparkling water, truly enjoy the taste of it, and start, cleaning up the messes of the day from little kids or whatever it is I needed to move through in that moment. And you unpack all of those distractions that you used to use food to satisfy and bury. And then you get back to this core of you, this gut brain that tells you very simply, hey, I'm hungry right now. Now's a good time to eat. And now I feel full. So now's a good time to stop. And then when you feel that desire, that magnetism to eat again, and you see those blueberries and you think, oh yeah, those blueberries would be really good, but I'm going to eat those when I'm hungry for them so that my body actually uses them. I don't need extra storage. I can eat those blueberries at a perfectly good time when my gut brain tells me. And so you learn to listen to those cues that are inherent in all of us, right? That infant and my infant that Shirley talked about and I talked about, start and stop. They know when they're hungry, they know when they're full. And now I have learned how to eat like my kids, and it is so satisfying. And it just frees me up from all of this extra angst and baggage and actual storage. Like I've lost the actual storage, and it is so wonderful.
I love that story. And I want to jump to Stella because you've been coming at this conversation. I'm going to come back to you, Shirley. Stella, you talk about empowerment. You wanted to find something that was empowering and you were attracted to this. But as a coach, it's all about empowering your clients to regain control over their life. How does that work? What do you teach the people that come to you and say, I need help?
Well, firstly, as a coach, you have to go through the process yourself because it's really important that you understand the depth of the process and that you are actually within deep at your core identity yourself, because it's not possible for you to help another along that process unless you're actually there. Um, and interestingly for me, I didn't come to it from a place of storage. So it was very, very different. But what I was doing, I was simply disconnecting from myself, from who I was. Um, and I was using chewing as an action. I was using my movement and chewing as well. But what it shows you when you disconnect in that way, I was jumping away from myself. I was actually running away from myself. I wasn't staying with eating. And that is the value of me. If I'm not valuing my food, if I'm not valuing my eating, I'm not really valuing the core of myself. So that was hugely important for me. And that's really what I discovered. But very different from Ingrid's journey.
And that's okay because we all have to come into an idea of who we are and how
Mm.
we find value in who we are. And then from there, we create an identity of who we are.
Mhm.
So when people come to you and say, I'm lost, and I've had these conversations with Shirley because um, people come to you as a coach expecting you to be the expert. And I like the fact that you just said the expert has to go through the process herself to really
Yeah.
appreciate the transformation. And the Envision Speaker Series is all about understanding the transformation. So now that you've gone through and understand the transformation, how do you then gain trust with your clients to kind of help them through their own transformation?
Well, there are lots of tools within the process. And I think that once people actually start on the energetics journey, it's so eye-opening, and it's so different from anything else that's out there, because it's not a diet. You don't have to write down the foods that you're eating. All you're doing is actually connecting to your hunger. You're writing down the start and stop of your hunger. And I think for people that's very freeing. But certainly, yes, once they start on the process, they just begin to see all the information that it gives you. And whenever, I mean, for me, I would forget to record the start and the stop of hunger. And I used to find this so frustrating. Why am I doing this? But that is information for you. And these are all learning opportunities. When you forget, it's not a failure. You're not doing it wrong. It's not a process that, there's not an exam in it. That is information. And when you actually dive into it, you begin to understand what's actually happening for you as the individual. So I think that's one thing that people love about the energetics process as well, is that there is no failure. Every step of the way, it's information, and you're learning something about yourself, about your eating habits, about your behaviors. And that itself is very empowering. And when you actually have your hunger in place, when you can actually sit down, record your start and record your stop of hunger, your eating is in place, that frees you up to then focus on the rest of your life, on whatever else you want to do, and the enjoyment of your life. So it's a really freeing and empowering process.
I like that you mentioned the idea of failure. Diets and how, and this is specific to America, we're crazy over here, and I just said it, in terms of how we eat, and how we're taught to eat, and the production of food and what to eat. Shirley, please, this program that you have, that you're teaching people, because when we go on a diet and we fail at the diet, it makes us feel bad because we've done something else wrong with our lives. How does this program help people re-engage the the brain so that it's not about failure? It's not about doing things wrong. It's about what Stella just said. It's about knowledge. It's about understanding. It's about appreciation. Can you talk to that, please?
Yes, and what Stella was talking about, and she explained it so well, was that hunger. Once you connect to hunger, you're connecting to yourself. So a lot of times people, they buried hunger for so long, they don't even know what that feels like. So we need to start acknowledging that we are starting to eat. That's the very first step, because when I developed this process, I thought we can never interfere with choice. That is going to disconnect you from yourself, because whoever owns the choice owns the power. Why do you think you feel like what you just described, Keith, that the feel that when you fail, like there's all that failure, like when you go off the diet, I say, oh no, that's not failure. You wanted to get back to yourself, but we're made to feel that it's so wrong because we have these rules of eating that somebody else created. And you're always wanting to get back to yourself. So when I created this process, I knew I could never interfere with choice. And people wanted to write down their foods or write down this. And I said, no, I don't want to know what you eat. That's up to you. I don't want any judgment. I don't want to even you to tell me what you're eating. That's yours and yours alone. I never tell people what to eat. I start them with starting what will really what when they're starting to eat. So how do we do that if they're not even knowing what hunger is? We start with an action that you know how to do and that you know you are doing before you start to eat. So how do we start this process? You start by sitting before you decide to eat. Before you put a nibble, a bite, or whatever, you sit before you eat. That acknowledges that you are starting to eat. And then the stop is once you stop and you stand up, now you don't eat. If you're going to eat again, you need to sit. That's what we record. We record the actual start and stop. And I'll get to that hunger scale in a second. But the start of eating just means you are sitting. And people say, okay, well, this is easy, until they figure out, oh my word, I just grabbed that as I walked past the counter and I wasn't even aware that I grabbed this. I wasn't sitting. That's not failure. That's information. That's a disconnect from yourself. Because when we start the process, I said, do you understand that you really want to reclaim your eating boundaries? And I'm always asking questions because I want them to own their own decisions. So they know they want to sit before they eat. Well, what happens when you're not sitting and you grab that information? Why did you disconnect? I was in, and then we talk about that, and we have that even on this recording sheet that it's been talked about just a little bit here. That why did you eat? Why did you forget to sit? I was in a rush. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't connected to myself. Okay, that's information. What was going on in the day that you disconnected? So you see, everything about your storage is about a disconnect from yourself. So I call it storage because there's energy in there. As Ingrid described, it's stored information. It gives you so much information. That's when they suck it out or they do something with it or they ignore it. I go, oh my word, that's the information. We need that information and help you process through when you use eating out of order. We're trying to put eating back in order so it's simple again. But all the way through, we're learning something. So we start out with just simply sitting before you eat. You're not eating when you're standing. You're not eating when you're walking down the street. You're not eating when you're driving. Now there you're sitting. However, you're moving. You've got to focus on something. You're not focusing on your driving if you're eating. You're not focusing on your eating if you're driving. One thing has to take precedence, and it's going to be your driving, hopefully. And then the eating becomes, you're not aware of it. You're not enjoying it. You're not really absorbing it. So the first thing that we start with to try to create these and eating boundaries is to sit. Then once you sit and you figure out what, you're sitting here, okay, all right, I stood up there, okay, I learned information. From the very beginning of this process, you are learning something and you are gradually putting eating back in order. Now, we also talk about a hunger scale, but people are that hunger is so foreign. We're taught to bury it, ignore it, not pay attention to it. And I'm just going, oh no, I said, I need that we need that information. We need that connection. That's the core of the essence. That's our original boundary, hunger and total choice. And so a hunger scale, the audience can do this when they're listening. If you imagine a scale from 0 to 10, 0 starved, 10 stuffed, 5, the feeling of nothingness. That's the feeling of balance. And for those that do sports, that's your empowerment stage. You've been fed. You're no longer hungry. You're not edging a little bit too full. You're not stuffed. You're not any of that. There's the feeling, and I call it a feeling of nothingness. When you think you're balanced, it's like, okay, there it is. There's the feeling of nothingness. That's when the infant wanted to stop eating because hunger had gone away. They answered the message. They answered the message of hunger. It had gone away. So the feeling of nothingness. Okay, so let's get back to that scale. 0 to 10, 0 starved, 10 stuffed, 5, the feeling of nothingness. You don't feel any hunger. You don't feel at least a bit crowded. That just tips that over too far that way, a little bit too much. So the feeling of the 5 is key. So if the audience now would put their mind in their stomach and imagine what they would feel like on that hunger scale. So you can all do this yourself. Generally, everybody knows because that's what we know. We were given this at birth. Like I said, we just stop listening. So then eventually, as we get the sitting down and they've gone through the process and they know, okay, I've got to sit before I eat. And for the most time, now they've learned when they're rushing, when they're driving, and when they have that strong desire to eat, like Ingrid talked about, okay, I know I'm not the least bit hungry. I know I can't sit. And then if she'll remember this, I would say, if you don't have time to sit, you don't have time to eat. That was another key thing. So we always want to sit. Then we add the hunger scale and we put down the start. You may start at a 5. And I remember he was an attorney when I used to do the seminars, the live seminars. And he said, oh my word, I always thought that was my start, the feeling of nothingness. No wonder I have all this extra storage. So you write down what number you are, and it may start with the 5. Maybe you ate from the 5 to the 10. And then what happens is we gradually start moving it down. And as you start moving it down, and you know you're not hungry, and this is what Ingrid would say, I know I'm not hungry. What else would I do? What if it didn't exist? What if eating just simply didn't exist? And I also had another client who he said, but Shirley, I understand that I'm not hungry, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have this magnetism of wanting to eat. What is this magnetism? I know I'm not hungry. I said, okay, imagine eating didn't exist right now. What would you do? And he looked at me and he said, my mind is blank. He said, I'm a CEO of a company and my mind is blank. I said, exactly. Because when you use eating out of order, it covers your creative soul, your creative mind, and it buries the information. You've used eating out of order. Taste had a very specific boundary. We have 4 other pleasure senses to use with all our thoughts and our actions to do something. There's lots of things to do. People say, oh, I don't have time to do this, but they have time to eat this, go to the refrigerator, take all that time to do that. It's going to free up time. That's what both Ingrid and Stella discovered, that when their eating is in order, oh my word, there's so much more information. So I go back to the CEO and I said, okay, let's just brainstorm. What would you do during that time? And he thought, and then all of a sudden he started thinking, and he thought, oh, I could walk down the hall. I could just, because he had these little things on his desk, he said, I could just rub this little thing on the desk. That's touch and movement, touch and movement. Walk down the hall, touch with your feet, movement. He said, I could just, think about things. All of a sudden, there was item after item after item. And he was so stunned that when I first asked him the question, he had no answer. Once we put eating out, where we said eating didn't exist, now his information could surface because it's all within you. I just take off the interference while putting eating back in order. Now our gut brain can surface. We talk about the wisdom of the body. And so many people are just not connected to it because, as you said, the wisdom of the body is so huge. There's so much information. It will guide you. We just, like I said, stop listening.
I love that. And so with everything that's been said, let's kind of put this together because we want to take our watching and listening audience to the target. And the target is to give them some things that they can do to make real change in their life today. Now, they're going to contact you because you're all coaches in your own unique way. And Ingrid, you didn't say that you were a coach, or you just you're not a coach, but you were empowered by the transformation. And so God bless you. That's perfect. But you're going to give some insight to our watching and listening audience because prior to this, we planned this out. I asked you to think about giving a to do or a ta-da moment to our audience. What would that be? And so I'm going to give each of you an opportunity. I don't care who goes first, so we're not going to go in any particular order. But what would you tell somebody today? Or how would they be transformed because of this conversation? The floor is open.
I think they just decided they were just going to sit before they ate, they would discover something. They would discover what we were talking about in that magnetism. So if they would just sit before they eat, they will feel that magnetism when they're not sitting. Or all of a sudden they'll be, like I said, walking past that counter and they'd grab something and they go, oh my word, I thought it would be so simple just to sit and eat. And then they go, okay, there's information in here. What is that information? And then you become curious and you want to know.
Ingrid, Stella?
Well, I would add to that, and following on from that, once, assuming that you're actually sitting, I would really take a moment to pause and just really building that pause, because then you're creating a habit and you're building a neural pathway. And just pause and try and sort of drop within yourself and get a sense of your hunger, how you're feeling, your thoughts and feelings that are going on in that moment in time. But in that moment of pausing, that's really important, because you're still, and to the body, that is signaling that you're safe and it's okay to eat. So then when you're pausing like that, you can start focusing on the food. It'll start triggering your taste buds. You'll start anticipating the food. It will trigger digestion. And that's all preparing you to eat and will enhance your enjoyment of the food. So sitting and pausing and following through with that pause is really key. And one thing I would also suggest that the audience do, if they log on to the energetics.com website, they can actually download a copy of Inner Eating. And that's the book that Shirley wrote, and it gives you lots and lots of information. And tells you all about the process. So I would really recommend that the audience do that as well.
And I'll leave that URL link in the show notes in the description. So absolutely. Stella, thank you. Ingrid, I want to come back to that pause idea, but I don't want to interrupt the flow. Ingrid, leave something with our audience, empower them right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. McNally. I've lost weight the hard way. After my first baby, I lost 50 pounds, but it took a year and a half of intense eating, low carb, strength training, all of that. And then when I stopped and got tired of eating low carb, the weight crept back on. And it was a process focused on deprivation and not joy and abundance. And energetics is a process where you learn to see eating as joyful and abundant, and focusing on that positivity and understanding that it doesn't have to be this awful, yucky process that deprives you of things that you want is so empowering. And it is the positivity that comes out of that has ripple effects into the rest of your life. I want to tell a story of my 5-year-old. 5-year-olds are learning how to be grown-ups eventually, and it can be hard. And my 5-year-old daughter had some tough times with some emotions. And she was seeing me unpack all of these negative associations with food. This is coming out at play at our dinner table, right? Like, we're very focused on eating together and enjoying that family time. And she's watching me learn how to eat like her. And I was talking about learning opportunities. And she was struggling with those emotions. And she said, Mama, with these big watery eyes, like, is this just a learning opportunity for me? And I said, oh yes, honey, it is. Like these are the ripple effects that once you simplify eating and take out all of these complexities and these rules and do this, don't do that, it really frees you up to carry that positivity and that freeness and enjoyment and abundance into the rest of your life. And people take notice. My relationships are improved. My mental load is improved. My mindset is improved. And I just am so thankful to have gone through this at the same time as I'm watching my infant eat. because that for me really clicked. Like, I can do that. I was born with these gifts. Like Shirley said, I just stopped listening, as many people do. Um, so what I would like to leave with this audience is that it doesn't have to be a negative thing to lose storage. After the second baby, I went through the energetics process, and it was nearly 40 pounds in 3 months of just tweaking eating when I'm hungry and learning how to do that. And it was effortless. Literally, the storage just came off, and it was a positive process, and it was an abundant process that taught me all of these gifts I have inside my body of touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. And I can apply those and not just automatically go to taste, just to move through life. So eating is moment to moment, and there's always going to be these magnetisms, these desires to eat. And once you have the tools and going through the energetics process, you learn how to overcome that, and eating becomes simple again. And you make automatic thought reminders of, if eating didn't exist right now, what would I do? Or, oh, that looks really good. That dessert looks really good. I'm going to eat that when I'm hungry for it. And it's not, oh, I shouldn't have that. I shouldn't do that right now. That means that I have to run 2 extra miles tomorrow. It's, I will eat that when I'm hungry for it, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. So that's what I would leave the audience with. This is a process of joy and abundance, and it really carries through into the rest of your life.
Well, I so appreciate it. And I would typically say at this point, there's no better way to end this conversation, but I had a thought when Stella was talking about that pause. And so I'm learning about, and that comes from another source you've integrated into your program. I'm learning about gratitude. I'm learning about a whole lot of things in the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So mindfulness, meditation, gratitude. And, my thought is, and I only want to add the thought, not to continue the conversation in any depth, but when we had the opportunity to pause and then we look at our plate of food and we're sitting down and we're now engaging, as I'm learning from the three of you, we're now engaging in an activity, very specific activity called eating, and we're learning to re-engage and understand how our body is processing that, but then giving thanks to the opportunity to eat. And so if we do nothing else but in that pause, but give thanks, I think that's a good start. I want to thank all of you for being in this conversation and for joining me in another episode of the Envision Speaker Series. And for our watching and listening audience, this has been Dr. Keith McNally, and I'll see you next time. Take care.